Perimenopausal Athletes and Beyond, a masterclass series bringing together experts in mindset, nutrition, training, and recovery. And today I have the incredible Mariana Rakai that is going to be interviewing me. So let me thank you for being here, Mariana.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm going to share a little bit about you and why it is that I asked you specifically to interview me. And let me first share that you are a coach yourself. You have you founded and are the owner of the Bisusu Fit and Tired Moms Run. You're also, which is really focusing on athletes that are moms and with busy lives and wanting to really stay active and trying to figure out ways of how do we do that, because it's kind of nuts trying to do it. So that's your focus population. And you also are an athlete yourself. You are just qualified for the World Championships in the 70.3 half Ironman distance, and your training is going really well now from all reports. And we know each other because, well, originally we met when I was working for the national organization of triathlon here in Canada, and you were also supporting it at a provincial level. And then we became coach and athlete. And we had a really rich and still have a really rich relationship of both learning, of mistakes, and we both are thriving from that relationship. So here we are continuing on. And so thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Tenille, and thank you for the lovely introduction. You're making me blush.
Oh, yeah, well, it's true. So yeah, let's get started.
Yeah, let's do that. So Tenille, who do you work with? Who are your athletes that you work with? Tell us.
Well, isn't it funny, because we so often, it's like perimenopausal athletes and beyond. And then half of the time if people go, well, I'm not really an athlete, but I want to learn something about being active.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting when we put in, and I want people, I want every single, by the end of this series, I really hope, and by the end of this interview, I really want people to take on and claim athlete. And I'll get to the question in a second, but I want to share what it means to me first. So what is an athlete? An athlete does intentional training. The athlete is engaged in both the process and in progress. So by that, what do I mean? The process is all about learning. And then there's two angles to that, isn't there? There's one that we can learn the science. And then there's one, and what is it that is known? It's the trying to, you're part of a masterclass series because you're trying to take in what is the knowledge that we have, what is the evidence that we have, what is the science based on populations of N equals, etc., that we can take and learn from. And then there's the process of learning oneself, right? And so that's the process piece. And in that, I am extremely, the athletes, who do I work with? I have athletes that love process, that are really excited about being in it, that want to eat up, like, how can I learn something so I can live a bigger, happier, healthier life? So then the second piece of it is the progress. And progress starts to look really different in perimenopause and beyond. And so one part is that I work with specifically in looking at what is it that we need to know as athletes that are going through immense change, hormonal change, physical change, societal change, like the pressures on us as, if we're beginning, perimenopause can happen as early as, our 35 going into our 40s. Well, I'm a geriatric mother. So that means that I have young children, but am I in early stages of perimenopause? Yes. So then what does that mean? Well, I'm in a really different phase that so many others, but it's a massive shift for so many athletes from, some populations of their children, if they have kids. Not everybody chooses, of course, but some children are leaving home as they hit perimenopause. Sometimes for athletes in perimenopause, they're at a height of a career progression that they're excited about. Regardless of what's happening, it's an incredible period of time of opportunity and change. And as athletes, as people who are adding on a wonderful stress, a phenomenal stress, a phenomenal strain that's good for us, we need to really, really dial in to how do we do that in a healthful way. So in the point of the progress is that I believe that I don't care how old how old we are, that we always can see and learn something about ourselves, both physically, targeting hard things, hard looking different, hard looking not the same as what we used to do, but hard looking different. Hard might be, how do I come to a place of confidence with my heart, knowing that I can push hard, and I'm letting go of the fear because I have an innate, and I have the knowledge that I'm strong and that I'm okay and that my body will protect me. At the end of the day, your body totally protects you. You're not gonna. It's really hard to do something really dumb. I actually, part of the process and how I see progress is that athletes, when they begin with me, hard starts to look different.
Mm-hmm.
And so why do I see progress? It's because we start to understand something about ourselves that we can tap into. It's I didn't know I can do that, but now I know I can.
Mm-hmm.
And super rich. There's one other part of being athlete and the people that I work with. Health trumps all. And this is a really hard thing. And I know that in our relationship, this was where it was really hard for me to communicate, and really we both came at it you're my sister in this, of you are so strong. And I see this in so many females, is that we wear the badge of I can push through.
Mm-hmm.
I know how to do this. I am not weak.
Mm-hmm.
And we wear that badge. And how difficult it is to know why health has to trump. Now, this is really an interesting concept. And this is where I believe that health and the health and the performance and the continuum, and what this, I do not subscribe, and I'll be clear, I do not subscribe to the concept that sometimes we have to jeopardize health for performance.
Mm-hmm.
Don't subscribe to it. I do not.
No. I agree.
And I think even I actually know at the Olympic level, if you talk to world champions, they have gone into places in which their health has been compromised, and they have performed at those places, but their best performance there, and this includes being happy in their life. This includes being happy in their life, is when they've had health.
Absolutely.
And it's fascinating to think about this. And so that's you like to kind of conclude on what is an athlete I work with? An athlete that, that I work with is perimenopause and beyond. And it's not, some may have race goals. Some may have outcome goals of, I want to get to X. I want to be at the world championships. I want to do this. Yes, absolutely. But for the most part, we want to keep going. We want to keep going. We want to have this part of our life. And how is it that we do that? That's where, so does that answer the question?
Yeah, so it does. Raises many other questions.
Yeah.
Talk to me about a new client of yours who doesn't see herself as an athlete. Like, what is the conversation that you have with her to, you always, with me, you always had really challenging questions, and we can come back to that later. But so tell me about like a new client that says, well, Tenille, I'm not really an athlete, like I'm not dreaming about world championships or whatnot.
Yeah.
How does that conversation look like?
Yeah, it's so great because I just had it yesterday. So what's interesting is like, okay, so what is it? And this was a comment in the Facebook group that I'm going to speak to in a live session. But the comment was, I don't feel like I'm an athlete because now I'm slow. Okay, so let's just think about that. Are athletes, do you become an athlete when you hit a certain pace? Right? Okay, so compared to what? That's the question. If we started this conversation saying an athlete is somebody who is intentional, and intentional means that you're invested in both the process and progress. And progressing not meaning by getting faster necessarily. It can mean by maintaining. It can be I got my heart rate, I held my heart rate for longer. I did a longer duration. I mean, progress can look I had fun. Like, imagine that, progress.
Yeah,
or something new.
Yeah, doing something new, or even just keep going, right? Like, this is 3 months in and I'm still going. Yay.
Yes, and not getting injured.
Yeah.
And so when I think of this, like, so I'll give an actual example too, but so what is it that what is our barometer of what is an athlete, and when do we get to claim it? When do we feel like we lose it? And it's not based on a comparative model. It can't be, because we're all going to get slower. So does that mean eventually, and that's okay, because that priority of being fast shifts. My priority of being fast has shifted. Yes, I mean, I want to feel good. Personally, if I can keep going and feel good, awesome. Because that's just not my priority right now. Do I want to get faster later on? Well, yeah, but it's going to be faster at the age of, mid 40s. And I think that, so when I get an athlete and they are not claiming it, I want to come back to, okay, so what is it that we get to claim? Now, this is super fascinating because it's also in the science. So one of my athletes, Diane Goodell, just adore her to bits. So she is coming back right now, when we started a year ago, almost now, and together, and it was, she got to her objective, she did a longer cycle race. It went really well. And then she came into some health issues that she had to resolve with a whole team of awesome humans. And then so we had to back off, shift gears, take on, and now she's back in physio and taking on, what does it mean to be athlete now? And so what is interesting is that when we do activity, we want to get on this idea that to be an athlete means that you train in a certain way. You train 1 hour workouts. Athletes do 1 hour workouts, right? Well, that's bunk. That in my mind, that's bunk. And or strength training means that we're going to the gym and lifting heavy. We know we need to lift heavy, but strength training also means thinking about our wrists, thinking about how we're going to brace our falls, thinking about all those little the feet work that we need to do, thinking about your hip rotations, thinking about, and guess what that comes from? Well, she's working really hard with a physiotherapist. So now she's doing her daily exercises with her physiotherapist, and she's got her strength program with me. And now she's getting back into the pool because all of a sudden she's got more shoulder mobility that she hasn't had for well over a year, and all these things, right? So now she's chalking it up, and I'm just like, okay, Diane, we have to dial it back a little. You're doing a lot of strength work. She's like, well, where? I only have one strength program from you. I'm like, well, that physiotherapy stuff is called strength work. And what I'm trying to point to is that so often we don't want to acknowledge all the things that we're doing for our health and how these things that we do for our health all add up, but they're all also stressors. So does she need to recover from some of the micro movements, the building of the micro movements, as much as she needs to recover from the big lifting squats, the hinges, the deadlifts? Yes, she does. Because a stress is a stress is a stress. It's always, we have to look at it as a whole. And we want to acknowledge all these pieces and say, oh, I'm doing something for my health. This is why I'm going to keep going. This is why I get to, like the progress of Diane. It's awesome. It's super awesome. Like, we start a spin session. She's like, I'm just going to do 30 minutes, and then just check in with myself. Okay, then 40 minutes. I'm like, checking in with Diane. She's still there. All right, 50 minutes. Oh, well, Tenille, I couldn't help it. My heart rate was good. I was doing good. I felt fantastic. I listened to my body. I kept going. So it's, is that an athlete? That's an athlete.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
So to me, an athlete is someone who challenges themselves either every day in some form of physical activity way. And it's also relative and personal, really. And just like looking back, we have kind of a similar background in a way that you were a professional athlete. I was a cross-country skier in my youth and quit racing just as I was moving up to adults because of injury. And for years, I didn't see myself as an athlete. I trained, I ran, and I did things that brought me joy. And there was times where I was progressing and times when I was going backwards, right?
Yeah.
But and at some point, I kind of lost connection with what it is to be an athlete in my mind. And then when I started working with you, I think we had this conversation, like, what is an athlete? And like, when do you see yourself as an athlete? And it took me a while before I started actually calling myself an athlete again, because now I'm in my 40s and I'm not competing in a high international level. So I didn't feel like I was an athlete. But something with that process of you asking those fantastic questions, I'm like, listen, I'm like thinking to myself, like, I am an athlete. And I started saying it out loud and I took pride in it because I can't be an athlete in my 40s. I call my little kids athletes because they are challenging themselves in so many different ways every day.
Yeah.
So I also have this conversation with my athletes. Like
and people would call you an elite athlete. This is what's so funny is that, we again get into this comparison model and be like, oh, Mariana's an elite athlete. And that's really true. And, it's funny because if you're listening to this, you're not normal. I'm sorry, everybody that's listening, you are not normal. And why are you not normal? Because you are part of, you're in a population that doesn't do this, that doesn't think of how am I going to improve my health through sport, through movement, through health, nutrition. These concepts, what you're doing and listening to a series like this is really trying to put it together for yourself. And this is unique. This is what I know. Right? You said one other thing that I think is really important, like one thing that I know you would tie and think about all of it, but it's like, how do we challenge ourselves every day? One of the things, and if you ask me, well, where have I failed? It's like, I'm so relieved. I was just listening to a podcast and the podcast title was, female athletes, all the things we did wrong and a couple things we did right. And it was like,
I love it.
It was so perfect. I was like, okay, so we're allowed as coaches to acknowledge that we maybe don't do everything right off the bat. And what I think is that I have an incredible conviction in thinking about what is our challenges and what is challenging. And because you and I share this personality trait of driving hard, and we know that this is one of our greatest assets, and it's our also weakest link. Absolutely. And so when we think of challenging ourselves, an athlete needs to see their greatest asset and then turn it on its head and say, how is this going to jeopardize the core of what I want to be? And so the challenge actually for you, at least when we were working together, was to back off, recover, eat enough, know really strongly what that baseline actually looked like. How do we even get there? And that, so for me now is, my athletes now get tired because every single time we talk, we're like, okay, so where, have we got the foundation there? Or how are you sleeping? Do we have adequate nutrition? Where is your recovery time for you? Do we have the movement principles down? Like, are we feeling like we can move our bodies? If we're not meeting those foundational principles, if we're not enjoying at the very base level these things, if we don't have emotional agility, if we're not, if we're getting stuck, if we're getting into that, I've got my blinders on, let's go. That's the danger zone. That's the red zone. That means, and I come into this, and this is a concept I know I wanted to bring in, is where have we got out of our rhythm and our cycle of being? So I'll just keep going. Should I just keep going?
That's a really, I love where you're going. And I know this will be a long conversation around this topic. I'll try to keep this short. But when we started working together, one of the things that I was very, blinders on, decided that I'm going to work so hard, harder than I've ever, trained for this crazy goal that we had to qualify for Kona on my first Ironman. And because to me, an athlete was somebody who was physically strong, mentally strong, those two things. Today, I will also add the emotionally strong, which at the time I didn't quite, I'm like, yeah, forget about that. mentally strong to be able to push through hard workouts, never give up attitude, and then the physically strong that, you know, we worked hard on. But I have to say that that was like the biggest mistake that I did. And the whole mentality, you know, like, you know, hashtag go one more, beat yesterday, fight, it just derailed me into this mindset where the harder I trained, the more confident I became.
Yeah.
But that took me to really dark places.
Yeah.
And that's where we can talk about the progress, like what do you learn from your failures, right?
Yeah. I think it's really interesting, and as people listen to this, and whether they want to coach or not, I think one of the big challenges that we have as coaches in an adult, as we're adulting in our adult life, is that coaches, if they are not firmly grounded and have at the essence and at the core, at their foundation and at their belief system, the principles of mindset, nutrition, training, and recovery, which is how I name my business. You know, I went from a Tri-Whole Health to a Element Sports Coaching, and then actively integrated these concepts. So before, when we were working together, you know, now my athletes all have to, they start their program by identifying their values. First thing, we get clear. We get really clear, and it's a process. It's not going to happen in a week. It's not going to happen 2 weeks. It's going to happen over 6 months. And then we're going to revisit and reevaluate, and, oh, my values have changed, and that's okay. But we understand what our guardrails are. So we stay emotionally and, you know, and spiritually with who we want to be through the process. Number one thing. And so where was I going with this? I said, one of the challenges that I see is that there's so much theory, there's so much science that we're getting, and it's amazing. I love it. You and I both love it. Like, how many courses can we take? How many books can we read? Where's the latest research? Who's explaining the research? Like, you know, I dig into this. And the challenge is that as a coach, and many coaches, and this is what I want to, you know, just put a flag out, is that we're paid to get you to your goal. And so that's why when an athlete starts with me now, I say, I don't care about your goals. I care about your health. We're not going to jeopardize it. If you want somebody that's going to push you now, I'm not your gal. And that's hard. Like, I do care about goals, but at the same time, I can only coach you right here, right now. I have no idea, because things change, life change. You know, we're going to keep going, but it's going to be progressing from where we are, not from where we want to be.
That's amazing. And I think as a coach, the best thing and the first thing that you should do with your athletes is to care about them and caring about their health, right? Unfortunately for me, I didn't care about my health. I was so driven by my big goals that I didn't really care that I was feeling. Can I swear on this? I was feeling shit.
Yeah.
And so I it was only, you know, the blinders on. I'm gonna get through anything in my way. And what the other thing that I wanted to say is that you as a coach can care about an athlete, but the athlete also has to take responsibility of really looking at herself. How am I feeling today? Am I tired? Am I moody? Am I just am I just beat? Am I just feeling like trash all the time? And I couldn't see past that. I couldn't be honest with myself, and I couldn't be honest with you, because it has to come from here. So I'm always asking for more, right? I was always asking for more. I was always asking for harder workouts, and it really, yeah. So it took me to overtraining.
Yeah, and I think that you can, if you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, but I didn't have those big goals, I'm not that person. Well, insert I want to look a certain way. Insert I want to lose 10 pounds. I want to be in that I'm inspired. We can be inspired by people, but we have to come right back to where we are. And not inspired, not in envy, but as not in comparison, but in who they be as those people, not what they look like, not what they're doing. And that is so hard. I'm challenged by that all the time. If I look at some of the other incredible people doing the work that we're doing, I look on, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. These negative messages, they come to me too. And man, does it take a whole lot of checking in. Hey?
Yeah.
Right? It does. It takes time to check in. And so to be really grounded in that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for me personally, like after we parted ways, I went through overtraining and lots of injuries, and all these that could seem as a failure really taught me so incredibly much about how I am showing up as an athlete, as a coach, as a mom, and as a friend, really. So, people say that it's not a failure if you learn from it. And I have to say, like, the whole journey of digging myself into this hole of overtraining really taught me incredibly much. And I finally have included this one piece of the puzzle, emotional health, into the mix, and it has such a huge impact on the overall performance. And as a human being, it sounds crazy, but it's the physical, emotional, and mental well-being that needs to be at the basis. So how do you go about making sure that people really take that seriously, all those 4 elements of yours, and not just focus on the training?
Well, I think you said it before, is that I can't make anybody do anything. So honestly, I can provide the encouragement. So, accountability, what do we have accountability, instilled into different ways of doing things, checking in, community. But at the end of the day, there needs to be a curiosity on the part of the athlete to understand fully what health looks like for them and what performance in sport means for them, where their guardrails are, and what we can do in the relationship of coach athlete to keep lifting that up. It's, I have another athlete, Laura, who is, she has no idea how strong she is. I'm just like, and it's so a lot of the work that we do is raising her mindset to the level which I already know she can do. And it's like, for example, I wrote her an email yesterday saying, I can't wait till your FTP test, because I've already done all the data analysis. I've already looked at what is she going to do? She doesn't know that. I want it to come from her. But so I see what she's already doing and what she can raise her game to. And now it's, where is her curiosity? Where's her learning in the mindset to be able to show up without hindering herself? And what does that look like? It means freedom. Just freedom to really be right there, not worrying, because the worry, and this is throughout all life, like we've in some other interviews, we've talked about, why is sport such a powerful tool? Because it's a microcosm of everything else we do. How we show up in sport is how we're showing up in every single aspect of our life.
Absolutely.
And so how we go through this is like, how do I show up in the boardroom? How do I show up to my family? How am I doing this? And it's really tough to sometimes be critical of yourself and to say, how do I take 100% responsibility for this? And then thrive in it. And that's where at the end of the day, I want my athletes, every single one of them, to leave me and have the power to be active for the rest of their life with the tools that they need to be intentional without even thinking about intention. To be thriving in process and in progress without even, just because it's who they be. It's not because they needed to check their watch. It's not because they needed to have some data that showed them this. It's because they just know inherently, oh man, I haven't got my heart rate up. I know that I can push myself harder up this hill, and I'm going to do it, darn it. Because I know I want to stay strong. And if I want to stay strong, then I've got to do it. And that's where I want my athletes to be, is able to say, Tenille, I've done it. I get it. I'm there. Because you're right, in your process of overtraining, goal-oriented, physical being of elite athlete, and then overtraining and all the health consequences that, came out of that. It's like, okay, so what now? Who do I get to be? And now you're in the process of relearning yourself with a coach that is helping you elevate that knowledge of, okay, well, this is where I can go. This is my progress. This is right. And just super exciting. Yeah. I think that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah. And I'd like to add that it's, if something like this happens, health issues, and as we move on to perimenopause and menopause, I'm not there yet, but I can just imagine myself comparing myself to a younger me. I'm not going as fast. I'm not feeling as good. Maybe there's some health issues. And when you are in that moment where you have to look at yourself in the mirror and be honest, like, okay, where am I today? It takes such a raw emotion and such a raw courage to be honest with yourself. It's almost scary to be in that moment by yourself. And last summer, when I was in that moment, I called you. I sent you a video message, bawling my eyes out. I don't know if you remember that, but that was the connection that we had and the trust that we had, because I knew you would understand. Yeah. So as a coach, when you have an athlete with the health issues, how do you make sure that they know you're there in the height of their fitness and in the lowest point?
Well, what a great question. It's relationship, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's entirely showing up on all four facets continuously. And I think it's authenticity.
Yeah.
Like, it's really caring.
Yeah.
And I know that for myself, and we can care in different ways as my company grows. I'm having to look at how do I support my athletes, but is it just me? And this is what I'm learning now and really trying to foster, just like in a partnership with a partnership period with your husband or with your partner or your family. We don't want to rely on one person because they can't be everything to us. And that's why we say community, 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 community. And so for the coach athlete relationship, yes, we need to be present. We need to be available. We need to be there. We need to be, trying to staying grounded in a relationship and absolutely 100% in a partnership on these learnings. I don't know everything about my athletes. I can't, I'm not my athlete. So it has to be a constant push and pull, push and pull, push and pull, learning, taking words, like it, that's what it is. Right. But in addition to that, and why I created Team Element is because it's a team, and my team has a holistic nutritionist. It has, it has this personal trainers. It has these pieces because I need a team. I need a team, and I want the community from the athletes to lift each other up. So what is the energy? So when we have our coaching calls every 2 weeks, the energy comes into the Zoom room saying, okay, who do we get to be? How do we show up? It's not just about me. It's about my assistant coach as well. And them. And so that's where we're headed now. That's how it's, and you foster the community. It's like knocking on the door. It's like, we live in such different communities now, right? We live in communities that are not just centered in the neighborhood. Like you're living in Dubai. This is where you live with your 3 kids living a really incredible full life. Do we still connect? Yes. Is it it's as far as where you used to live in Souk. So, like to me, it zooms, right? So the community is about coming in together and feeling like you belong. And we've talked about that in some other, with Sasha Golik, she talked about this idea of what's important, and she's absolutely right. Brené Brown, do you fit or do you belong?
Yeah, that's so powerful to provide the community.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's super cool. So it's not just one person, and that's where I think that we as coaches, I think that's where we want to be, because you can get an app for that. You can get an app for your training program, but you can't get an app for relationships.
No, that's true.
Even little reminders, like we say, oh, I have a relationship with you, but it's an automated reminder. That's not a relationship. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. So do you have an example where you really feel like you succeeded with an athlete? Give me an example.
Yeah. Well, I guess to leave this discussion on like a super positive note, I think it's like, where is my success? My success is, of course, I love it when my athletes, get a personal best, or they're progressing in their times and their powers, and they do that. But I was having a conversation with Marlo the other day, and she's a physiotherapist, came to me re-entering her athletic life as an athlete in perimenopause. And she's like, I just feel good. I just feel good. Yeah, I'm running. Yeah, I'm doing it. Just like, but there's nothing, I just feel good. Honestly,
that's amazing.
That's it.
That's amazing.
So then I was like, can I have a testimonial? Because honestly, like, it's so, what's sexy? It's sexy to have, my athletes on podiums and, having everybody raw, because that's what our society wants us to have. It's sexy to have made these massive leaps and bounds. But to me, I know I'm on the right track as a coach if we have consistency, we share a wonderful story of growth together, and that my athletes are feeling good no matter where they're at, because perimenopause is not an easy thing to go through. So it's, can we, even when we are having crappy days, symptoms are rearing its head, you know, like flooding of, you know, having your period, like wherever we're at, you still have a deep sense of, I'm taking care of my body. I'm okay. It will pass and I'll find myself again. And so it's the cycle that we continuously come in, right? It's like, how do we continuously recover? How do we continuously be in cycle in everything that we do? Because it's not all going to be pretty. And figuring out when we get out of cycle and how to come back in when we drop off, you know, like, oh, I've got symptoms. Oh, I've got injured. Oh, I did this. Oh, I didn't realize my stress load was actually getting that high, Tenille. I didn't realize that this is what was happening to me. Okay, let's learn, let's reset, let's figure it out. Do we need to change up on nutrition, mindset, nutrition, training, recovery, like all these pieces, right? So at the end of the day, it's being able to go through, you know, I said to feel good, but it's actually to go through the whole thing. It's not just to feel good. It's actually to come through things together. And to continuously, because I work with athletes, to have process and progress.
Yeah. That is so powerful. And I love the idea of a cycle. And if something happens, to come back to the cycle, how do we get back to the cycle? That is so powerful. And I just love that idea of cycle. And I love your success story is feeling good, because it is so powerful. And from my own learning experience, I didn't know that you can actually feel good while you're doing a big block of training, right? So somebody told me, you know, you don't always have to feel trashed. And that was kind of like a light bulb moment. I'm like, what? Really? And it's part of this process, as we been talking about progress and process, is understanding yourself and, you know, coming into yourself and understanding what makes you feel good, but also, like, again, emotional, physical and mental feel good. So I'm all for for that feel good feeling.
Yeah. And that also
so powerful.
means that we can be strong athletes.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, my dear, what a conversation. Oh, we knew it. We would have a fun one. I hope that, do you have any other questions just to tie it together and end it here?
I think, yeah, we could talk for hours. So let's pull the plug here and maybe talk another time.
Yeah, well, we will continue to always have the conversation going. Well, you know, you and I personally, because we're invested in that relationship, and there's always more things to say and to do. I, you know, there was one question that I didn't tell you that I've been asking all the speakers at the end of every interview, and the question was, and I'll keep mine extremely short, but the question is, was there a one moment in time in which you knew that coaching was going to be what you needed to do? And to answer that question, there was, and I was in a counseling office, and I was really in a challenging situation. I was actually on maternity leave. I didn't feel like going back to my work situation was going to be a positive move for me. And I was really stressed about it. So I was, you know, trying to get some help and some different perspective and thinking about this. And the counselor asked, she said, close your eyes. And I encourage people to do this if they're feeling a little bit lost in their why, because that's another part of what I ask my athletes to do. We really delve into the why. And she said, where are you? Like, find your place of joy, and where are you? And where is it that you're thriving? And And it was to try to come into something concrete that was happening around me at that time, or that I could grasp onto because it wasn't too far away. So it wasn't an outward goal. It was something that was right there. And I just kept on coming back to the side of the pool. And as I did a lot more coaching on deck than I'm currently doing. But, that was where I realized I love helping people feel the water, helping to know their body, encouraging that conversation. And so I knew that that was going to be my calling right there. I was just like, oh, that's it. It's not about building training programs. It's not about it's not about the races for me. It was all about the conversation that people have with their bodies. And I had no idea. And I was like, oh my goodness. Because when I have Alex, when I was, I can come right down to thinking who I was thinking about, and then Silken and those experiences here, I was coaching and a multiple Olympian in the pool, because Silken Lauman, she knows her paddles like roads, so she has an ability to I would say, just drop that pinky just a centimeter so you can feel the water a little bit more, and that would be no problem for her. She had an awareness. And I was, and then other athletes that are come in, they didn't know how to swim 25 meters, and it was like, Alex, we're learning how to grab water. I want you to feel selfish in the water. I want you to do this. And then she would start to feel selfish in the water, trying to take it all. And now she's working with Susan Simmons doing open water swimming, cold water into open water swimming. Like, she's going the distance. She's going around islands at the lake nearby. Like, it's amazing. And she couldn't even swim 25 meters. And I was part of that journey, like the most powerful thing. So anyways,
that is amazing. Thank you for that, sharing for that story.
Yeah, it's super fun. So that was my aha, that's my why. And I guess I should end this, saying, so if you want to know more, come to Element Sports Coaching, and you too can be part of the community. And thank you, Mariana, for coming and joining and being in this conversation. I absolutely adored it. I knew I would. We really didn't, we were ready to take on the flow, and we did. So thank you. And I hope everybody that has listened to this whole series has enjoyed every moment of it, and that you do keep the conversation going. Join us, if you have not already, in the Athletes Thriving in Perimenopause and Beyond Facebook group, and I will certainly welcome you there. And it's the ongoing connection point for everybody that's free. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.